All right, so we want to talk now about a couple things going on with the Department of Justice. First, a quick interesting story. Do you remember earlier this year when the founder of the website Mega Upload was arrested and thrown into jail? His website was promptly shut down and all of his property seized. That man was Dotcom, and he spent about a month in jail accused of running a criminal enterprise, Mega Upload, that helped millions of people pirate music and movies. Well, guess what? A court has now ruled that the restraining order, obtained in part by the U.S. Department of Justice, it allowed authorities in New Zealand to seize his assets in the first place. That was null and void. Essentially, that means that those New Zealand police illegally invaded Dotcom's home and also illegally took all his things. We're talking jewelry, cars, electronics, all without a valid court order to back them up. Needless to say, Dotcom might be getting all his stuff back. Now, the U.S. Justice Department is still trying to have him extradited to stand trial here, and they say he made nearly $200 million illegally off of copyrighted materials uploaded by users of his website. Now, again, all of this happened in New Zealand, but much of it was in coordination with the U.S. Department of Justice. And right now, there are quite a few questions being raised about the way business is conducted at the Department of Justice. A major complaint right now, the constitutionality of the Patriot Act and how it's been interpreted since it was signed into law more than 10 years ago, back in 2001. It's gotten to the point where two U.S. senators, Oregon Senator Ron Wyden and Colorado Senator Mark Udall, have written a letter to Attorney General Eric Holder, asking him to reconsider some of the ways the Patriot Act has been used and interpreted throughout the years and how it is in the future as well. They say there is a significant gap between what most Americans think the law allows and what the government secretly claims the law allows. So I want to talk more about this with Trevor Tim, an activist for Electronic Frontier Foundation. Hey there, Trevor, excuse me. The EFF, I know, has been very active, fighting to gain a better understanding about all this with court orders, with Freedom of Information requests to the Department of Justice. What is it specifically that you are hoping to obtain?
Well, let's take a step back here for a second and look at the actual part of the law that we're trying to challenge. It's called Section 215, and what it does, it essentially allows the DOJ to go to a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, it's called, which will issue secret court orders that allows them to obtain basically any business record. So it can be from an ISP, it could be your internet history, or it could be your cell phone records.
Let me just stop you because we have we have something that we can show our viewers with this language on it that we want to put up on the screen.
Sure.
The part of Patriot Act that you're speaking of, Section 215, again, helps officials get access to people's records, especially the FBI, giving them the power to require people to hand over papers and books and other items. So we could be talking about emails, you know, and this is under the guise of finding international terrorists, but also clandestine intelligence activity. So I'll let you continue there, Trevor. Sorry to interrupt. We just wanted to show it for our viewers. This Section 215, what's the biggest issue with it?
So, like you said, it's supposed to be used for terrorism and espionage cases, and, you know, it's already an expansive law as it is. But the Justice Department seems to believe that because of secret orders made by these courts, that they now have an even more expansive interpretation of this law that doesn't involve terrorism or espionage act at all. The New York Times reported about 6 months ago they could be gaining personal information of ordinary Americans. And as you mentioned in the intro, there are two senators, Mark Udall and Ron Wyden, who warned on the Senate floor that Americans would be shocked to learn what the Justice Department's interpretation of this law is. Unfortunately, they're not allowed to say anything more because it's classified. So we at EFF, along with in separate lawsuits with the ACLU and the New York Times, have sued the government to ask them to release this secret interpretation of what is a public law, in which every American should have the right to know how it's being used.
It seems to me, Trevor, one of the keys here really is the use of language, because on one hand it's specific, but on the other hand it leaves room for interpretation. And from what I understand, you guys are you know, the records that you have gotten access to are a little bit different than you think the other set of records are. Go into a little bit of detail about this.
Yeah, sure. So after they didn't respond to our Freedom of Information Act request, we sued them, and they were ordered to release some documents to us. We just got those documents last week, ironically, during Sunshine Week, which is a celebration of open government in the U.S. But unfortunately, the 300 pages they gave us did not pertain to anything involving the secret interpretation. All it just gave us was the interpretation of the law we already know exists. And, obviously that's not what we want. We want them to release what they are actually using this law for, which, as the senators have warned, could be unfettered access to innocent Americans' private data. For example, they could be taking cell phone company records in bulk form, and it could be affecting countless Americans. So it's really important that they release this information so we can better understand how they're using this law. Without this information, it's impossible to challenge the law on constitutional grounds, and Americans could be being affected, and they would have no idea.
Now, you say the government could be getting these cell phone records. They could be getting things. But other than the, concern, the raised eyebrows from these two senators, is there other evidence out there, Trevor? Are there other things that are more tangible for people to say, hey, there's definitely something wrong here?
Well, we know that the use of this section is increasing, and we also know that over 80% of the requests are Internet records requests. And we just don't understand the extent to which they're going, how many people these requests are affecting, because they may be sending out one request, but it may be affecting who knows how many people when they give these requests. And as I said before, it may not be involving terrorism or espionage cases at all. It may be ordinary Americans who are being affected like that. And we've seen this problem a bunch of times in the Patriot Act with other sections too, like national security letters, where they go after similar information from people without a court order or a warrant, where these people are sent. I think there's hundreds of thousands that have been sent since 2001, yet barely 1% of them make up terrorism cases. So it's just another example of the government using the Patriot Act, which was passed under the guise of protecting us from terrorism, but using it to curtail people's civil liberties and use it for ordinary crimes that it was never meant to use for.
And it was passed, Trevor, in 2001, and I think a lot of people thought, this is going to